Okay, let's do a quick recap on the assembling of these frames. Now I like to do my frames in a production line kind of process. So to begin with though, notice the reflection in my tabletop. That's because I like working on 1/4 inch thick plate glass. For one reason, no glue sticks to it, so if I do get glue on my tabletop, I can scrape it off with a razor blade. And it's also a very flat and smooth surface, which makes it ideal for assembling parts. So, as an assembly line, we start with punching the frames out of the sheet stock, like that. And then it goes to here, where I use the floor timber and the 2 longest frame pieces, and I set it up in this jig by lining up the notch with the keel, and the tops of the frames are lined up with the edges of the tabs there. Okay. Now, I also use this stuff here, this 5-minute super glue, and I use that to glue these 2 joints together right here. Now these joints really don't have to be that strong, just strong enough to hold this frame together. And I also use the 5-minute super glue because I can take this frame off of this jig in 5 minutes and move on to my next step right here, which is sanding the ends of my pieces and then assembling them onto my frame. Once they're on there, I clamp them up. 5 minutes later, the clamps come off, the frame gets put into the finished pile, and the process starts all over again. Now, at this stage, if you're using a glue that takes a half hour to an hour to set up, either you're going to have a lot of these clamps, like 50 of them to do 10 frames, or you have to use a glue that's also going to set up in 5 minutes, which this stuff right here, this 2-part 5-minute quick set epoxy. Okay, now the problem with that is you mix up a little puddle of it here on your glass, but you never mix up exactly enough. It's either a little too much or not enough. So you do end up wasting some of the epoxy by making your little puddles. But I have made frames, glued them up this way, and it works very well. 5 minutes later, those clamps could come off of there, and the process keeps going. Or, if you're in no hurry, you could use Titebond wood glue. Use it for this process here. Clamp these up, wait an hour, and then do your next frame. And the reason we need the clamps is because even though it says on this thing strong initial tack, it's not strong enough to really hold those frames together without the clamps. So what I do is I take it out of here and I pour a small amount in these little film canisters, and then I leave the tops off the film canisters. But as you can see here, the initial glue is very watery. You see that? Okay? And you cannot hold it in your hand and pick up the film canister. Okay, because it doesn't have that strong tack to hold it. So, by leaving the caps off, it improves the tack of the glue to the point where this one's been now setting for about a day, and I could stick my little applicator in here like this. Now watch. You see? It'll hold. It has a good tack to it. So, or like I showed you, take this Titebond, I put it in little film canisters until it gets very tacky, and then when I build this part of the frame, clamp it down. 5-10 minutes later, the clamps could come off, the frame goes in the pile, and the assembly line process keeps going.